working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, Amal Maangeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. We're coming to you live from Manila in Thailand. Hello, Esther.
Hi, Alma, and good afternoon to all our viewers. I'm Esther Odanga from EBC Thailand Bureau, bringing you the news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines. A Myanmar junta court convicted Aung San Suu Kyi of 3 criminal charges, sentencing her to 4 years in prison in the latest in a slew of cases against the ousted civilian leader.
President Duterte on Monday said he wants to correct a law requiring the assessment of reports on disaster areas on a state of calamity is declared before he stepped down from the office in June.
The Philippines has urged Indonesia to lift its recent ban on coal exports, with Manila warning the policy will have a detrimental impact on the coal-reliant country.
And the Philippine Army's Armor Division got a much-needed firepower boost with the delivery of 15 M125A2 Armored Mortar Carriers, or AMCS, which are equipped with 120mm mounted mortar systems, or MMS.
A Myanmar junta court convicted Aung San Suu Kyi of 3 criminal charges, sentencing her to 4 years in prison in the latest in a slew of cases against the ousted civilian leader. A source with the knowledge of the case told AFP the 76-year-old was found guilty of 2 charges related to illegally importing and owning walkie-talkies and one of breaking coronavirus rules. Junta spokesman Major General Zhao Min-chun confirmed the verdicts and sentences and told AFP Suu Kyi would remain under house arrest while other cases against her proceed. The walkie-talkie charges stem from when soldiers raided her house on the day of the coup, allegedly discovering the contraband equipment. Besides Monday's cases, she's also facing multiple counts of corruption, each of which is punishable by 15 years in jail and of violating the Official Secrets Act. In November, she and 15 other officials, including Myanmar's President Win Myint, were also charged with alleged electoral fraud. During the 2020 polls, her National League for Democracy party had swept the elections in a landslide, trouncing a military-aligned party by a wider margin than the previous 2015 elections since the coup. Many of her political allies have been arrested, with one chief minister sentenced to 75 years in jail. Others are still in hiding.
And in a related news, the United States on Monday called a prison sentence for Myanmar's ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi an affront to justice and renewed a call for her release. Let's take a look.
The Burmese military's regime unjust arrests, conviction and sentencing of Aung San Suu Kyi is an affront to justice and the rule of law. We call on the regime to immediate release Aung San Suu Kyi and all those unjustly detained, including other democratically elected leaders.
In other news, President Duterte said he wants to correct a law requiring the assessment of reports on disaster areas on a state of calamity is declared before he steps down from office in June. He expressed frustration over anything that hinders or delays government response. He said the law needed to be repealed to allow the next administration to better deal with all kinds of disasters. Take a look.
We were having a quandary, because before you can declare a proclamation or something, or you give the money, there has to be evaluation of damage. Paano yan? kailangan ng tao kaagad kasi, well, in places where they can buy, like the urban areas, marami silang mabilihan. Pero ito, yung pera na lang para makapaggalaw sila so that they can move and hopefully recover faster than expected. I hope that we can correct these things before we go out. Propose something like this, yung mga corrective measures sa batas. Kasi alam, so the next time na wala na tayo, at least yung next administration would be in a position to deal with the problem faster and more sensible. That provision in the law, it's really silly. That's what I call a silly law. I'm not referring to the present Congress. But kung anong Congress yan, ay hindi talaga pinag-isipan ng husto.
In December, President Duterte described waiting for the assessment of reports as a hindrance and legal obstacle that delayed his declaration of a state of calamity in areas battered by the typhoon and prevented the government from acting immediately. Typhoon Odette pummeled several provinces, particularly in the Visayas and Mindanao last month. And the president declared a state of calamity in Mimaropa, Region 4B, Western Visayas, Region 6, Central Visayas, Region 7, Eastern Visayas, Region 8, Northern Mindanao, Region 10, and Caraga, Region 13 on December 21.
Meanwhile, the use of face shields in Quezon City is mandatory only inside hospitals and quarantine facilities. The city government clarified on Monday as it trashed yet another fake news. In a phone interview on Monday, Mayor Joy Belmonte denied the false information that has been circulating on social media. QC's Ordinance Number 3079 states that the use of face shields is not mandatory in public places and only be required under Alert Level 5. Also on Monday, the mayor dispatched a team to a mall in Cubao District and a supermarket in Barangay Kamuning following complaints that clients were refused entry because they were not wearing face shields. She said the private establishments may be penalized for refusing entry to those who are not wearing face shields. Unless there is a resolution requiring face shields, the public can report such incidents to the city hotline number 122.
In other news, 3 Cambodian deminers were killed on Monday by anti-tank landmines that exploded as they tried to remove them, according to authorities. The 3 experts from non-profit organization Cambodia Self-Help Demining CSHD were killed instantly in the blast, which also seriously injured 1 other person. The team were removing leftover mines from the country's bitter civil war in a remote village in northwestern Preah Vihear province, according to Heng Ratana, Director General of the Cambodian Mine Action Center. This is really sad news, and they were trying to remove 2 or 3 anti-tank mines that were stacked on each other, according to Sofin Sofari, CSHD's operations manager, telling AFP. In a separate incident, a man burning vegetation on his farm was also killed by war-era ordnance in the same village just 20 minutes before the explosion that killed the deminers, according to Heng Ratana. Cambodia was ravaged by nearly 3 decades of civil war from the 1960s, leaving the poverty-stricken nation one of the most heavily bombed and heavily mined countries in the world. Around 20,000 people have been killed there since 1979, and twice as many have been wounded in landmine and unexploded ordnance accidents. The kingdom has vowed to clear all mines and unexploded ordnance by 2025.
In other news, a ship hijacked by Yemeni rebels in the Red Sea has 11 crew on board from 5 countries. The United Arab Emirates told the United Nations Security Council president on Monday. 7 of the crew are Indian and the other came from Ethiopia, Indonesia, Myanmar, and the Philippines, the UAE's permanent representative said in a letter obtained by AFP. It denounced the act of piracy against the UAE-flagged Rawabi, which the Houthi rebels seized on January 2. The Iran-backed rebels say they seized the Rawabi in Yemeni waters and have released video which they say shows military equipment on board. This act of piracy is contrary to the fundamental provisions of international law, said a letter signed by UAE Ambassador Lana Nasebe and dated January 9. It also poses a serious threat to the freedom of safety of navigations, as well as international trade in the Red Sea and to the regional security and stability. Nasebe described the Rawabi as a civilian cargo vessel that was leased by a Saudi company and was carrying equipment used at the field hospital. It was traveling on an international route, she added. The Saudi-led coalition intervened in Yemen to support the internationally recognized government in March 2015 after the Houthis captured the capital Sana'a the previous September.
In other news, Interior Secretary Eduardo Año confirmed that he has contracted COVID-19 for the third time. Año's test results were released on Monday after many of his close contacts also tested positive for the virus. He said, "Thankfully, I remain asymptomatic as of now, and I will continue to work while isolating. And I encourage everyone to get vaccinated and boosted as soon as possible and to continue following health protocols," Año said in a message sent to the Philippine News Agency. He gave his report virtually to President Duterte during the talk to the people on Monday night. Año first tested positive for COVID-19 on March 31, 2020, and underwent a second test on April 8, which came out negative. However, on August 16 of the same year, Año again tested positive for the virus. On January 11, 2021, Año went on a one-month leave as part of his then post-COVID health recovery plan.
Metro Manila mayors have unanimously agreed to keep the National Capital Region, or NCR, under Alert Level 3 or AL3 amid recorded high numbers of COVID-19 cases. Chairman Benjamin Berhur Abalos Jr. of the Metropolitan Manila Development Authority, or MNDA, said on Monday. We are consistently monitoring the region's HCUR, or healthcare utilization rate, and we assure that the NCR mayors are ready in case the metrics show the need to escalate Metro Manila to Alert Level 4. Abalos said, citing the HCUR in the metropolis between January 8 and January 9 only noted a slight increase within the metrics of AL3. Based on the Department of Health's, or DOH, statistics, Abalos said ICU beds were at 51% last January 8 and rose at 52% last January 9. Isolation beds, on the other hand, went from 51% to 50% on the same dates. Ward beds noted an increase from 62% last January 8 to 65% last January 9. Ventilators, meanwhile, registered a decrease from 27% to 26%, also on the said dates. Based on monitoring, Abalos also noted that the public had been self-regulating in the past few days, citing less traffic on the road and lesser people in the malls. Further, Abalos underscored the importance of vaccination, citing records from DOH that 85% of critical and severe COVID-19 cases and 93% of deaths are unvaccinated.
And the news continues here on ASEAN in Focus. Esther and I will be back right after this.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. May lalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Ang show ng tanging hangarin ay mag-share ng katatawanan. Yan ang init ng pagmamahal. Dahil masarap mag-share. Mahulaan nyo kaya ang sagot sa ating Say What?
22 years na akong nagpapaganda.
Try lang ng try.
Sabi mo, di ba tingnan ko magbabangga na?
Yanis, Nakaball Videos.
Buongiorno, signore e signori. I will cook for you. I will add special ingredient. 1/4 cup of
Ang iba't ibang gamit ng karate.
Bukod sa self-defense.
Uy!
Lulusong kayo sa tubig, isa-isa kayong pupunta dito para punuin yung tubig na yan. Sa pamamagitan ng pagpiga na inyong damit, pero hindi nyo humubali.
Sa ating pong lipunan, hindi na mawawala ang mga samot-saring problema. Kaya tuloy lamang pong pag-aksyon, paghahanap ng solusyon. Lalo na ngayon, may maaasahan ka ng re-responde. Sabado, alas 6 hanggang alas 7 ng gabi. Ito ang Responde, mata ng mamamayan.
Welcome back, and here with us is a very special person because she's going to update us on the situation of Filipinos in Russia and Kazakhstan, where there was a violent protest recently. Here is, may I introduce to you, EJ Merced, live from Moscow, Russia. Hello, EJ. Kumusta po sa inyo?
EJ,
Hello, EJ. Can you hear me?
nag-freeze.
All right, we'll get back to EJ in a little while. But first, Esther, do you have something for us?
Yes, in other news, Alma, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas or BSP on Monday reported a 98.9% rise in the country's foreign direct investments or FDIs in October, bringing the country's total FDI inflows above the 8 billion peso mark. FDIs to the countries grew for the fifth consecutive month in October last year to hit $855 million from $430 million in the same month in 2020. The marked a 98.9% rise year on year. FDIs are investments made by foreign players to the Philippines in the hopes of long-term return. Since these are the country for a longer term compared to the short-term counterpart, the foreign portfolio investments or FDIs usually create jobs for Filipinos and has a multiplier effect on the economy. The BSP said the recorded increase in FDI net inflows in October 2021 was mainly on account of the 78.5% growth in non-residents' net investments in debt instruments to $637 million from $357 million in October 2020.
And Asian markets retreated Tuesday as investors grew increasingly concerned about the Federal Reserve's plans to wind back its financial support measures and lift interest rates within months. While the fast-spreading Omicron coronavirus variant plays on nerves, traders are now coming to terms with the imminent end to the pandemic era of ultra-cheap cash, which helped the economic recovery and fanned a global rally for nearly 2 years. Several countries have already started hiking borrowing costs, but all eyes are on the U.S. Fed Reserve as it tees up its first move, with commentators predicting that to come in March, followed by 2 or 3 more by the end of the year. The prospect of higher rates has rattled U.S. markets at the start of the year. The Nasdaq is already down more than 4% as tech firms are more susceptible owing to their reliance on debt to drive growth. While the tech-heavy index inched up slightly Monday, the S&P 500 and the Dow closed in the red, though late dip buying helped them recover from early steep losses. Asia also suffered in early exchanges, with Tokyo returning from a long weekend break to end the monitoring lower, while Hong Kong, Shanghai, Sydney, Seoul, Wellington, and Taipei also slipped. Singapore and Manila were flat, though Jakarta rose.
And the news continues here in ASEAN in Focus. Alma and I will be back after this.
Samahan ang paborito nating barkada sa umaga. Magbibigay ng saya, tawanan, at iba't ibang pakulo sa inyong umaga. Busog pa kayo sa kaalaman,
Tony knows!
At updated sa umaarangkadang mga balita. Matutong kumita, magluto, mayroon ding sayawan at kantahan.
What? I am a good girl.
Ang programa na nagbibigay inspirasyon sa bawat kada all over the world.
Here in Net25, we are your fans.
Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 6 hanggang alas 8 ng umaga. Dito lang sa Net25. At home kayo rito.
Abangan ang mga istorya ng pagbangon sa Season 2 ng Lingap Stories tuwing Linggo, alas 5 ng hapon sa Net25.
Sa kabila ng patuloy na pagbaba ng alert level sa Metro Manila,
sa gitna ng kabi-kabilang paalala sa mga magulang o guardian,
matapos ang maghapong paghihintay,
mas matalas na pagtingin sa mga nangungunang balita.
Magdodoble kayo daw ngayon ang senador para ipakilala.
Tiniyak ng mga opisyal na mayroon silang sapat na supply ng bakuna na standby.
magmamatyag at magiging mapanuri.
Maaaring magpa-drug test ang sinuman sa alinmang mga testing center.
Sa kaliwat ka ng batikos ng kanyang mga kritiko.
Mata ng Agila. Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 6 hanggang alas 8 ng gabi. Dito lang sa Net 25.
And let's get back to the situation of the Filipinos in Russia and Kazakhstan. To join us live again, here's EJ Merced. Hello, EJ.
Magandang hapon po, ma'am.
Magandang hapon. Ay, salamat naman at naayos yung ating signal. Thank you very much for joining us today, EJ. But please, first, sabihin mo sa amin, what is your role there for the Filipino community there in Russia and Kazakhstan po?
I am a Philcom leader here in Russia, and it just so happened that Kazakhstan is one of the countries under the jurisdiction of Philippine Embassy in Russia, which we are working together.
Okay, again, we're having some technical glitch with our signal in Russia. Hello, EJ, are you back?
Yes.
Ayan, okay. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. Okay, please continue. So what do you do in Russia? What are you doing right now in Russia for the Filipino community there? Yes. Sige po, go ahead.
Yes, kami po yung organization na in-monitor sa lahat ng mga problema ng ating mga kababayan, and we serve as a bridge to our embassy because sometimes our kababayan has no access direct to our embassy, and it just so happened na ngayon may Facebook na, kaya medyo madali na sa amin ang pagbigay sa kanila ng mga informasyon regarding sa mga sitwasyon ng ating mga kababayan dito sa Russia, Belarus, and Armenia.
Ayan, mabuti naman at meron kami mga kakilalang katulad nyo para i-update kami sa mga pangyayari dyan sa Filipino community there. And please tell us, ano ba ang impact at chain effect nitong pandemic? Kumusta na ba ang situation dyan sa Russia regarding the coronavirus situation at ang status ng ating mga Pilipino dyan, documented and undocumented?
Ang impact po nung pandemic, dalawa po. Naging positive at saka positive in the sense na marami po ang nag-focus sa kanilang health dahil dati puro lang trabaho ang mga Filipinos dito. So ngayon medyo nakafocus na rin sila sa kanilang health. And ang impact din ito sa ating mga kababayan ay medyo nabigyan sila ng chances to give themselves a chance na mag-ano sila, mag-ingat. Dahil yun nga, walang nag-aasikaso sa kanilang mga bakuna, hindi sila aware sa mga ganyan. And then also yung sa economic side, yung una medyo hindi maganda. But then later on, medyo okay na. Sa ngayon, marami pong umuwi dahil doon sa bagong rule ng Russia na they call it amnesty, na you are forgiven kung nag-overstay ka dito sa Russia and then you can go home. But they don't have assurance to come back. But then, sa ibang mga natira dito sa Russia ngayon, sa economic side, naging okay siya dahil tumaas yung sahod namin. Dahil marami yung demand sa trabaho at konti na lang yung, hindi naman konti, but most of those na umuwi because of this amnesty ay, siyempre, nawalan sila ng trabaho, pero nagkaroon naman ng chance yung ibang mga kababayan natin na magkaroon ng malaking sahod sa ngayon.
Okay, so EJ, situation ng status ng health ng ating mga kababayan dyan sa Russia. Kumusta naman po sila?
Before pandemic po, usually merong mga pakonti-konti. Pero pakonti-konti na mga cancer patients, yung mga uuwi na merong terminal illnesses. But then, ngayon, mas dumami sila at lalo pa po silang naging open at naging nag-communicate sa ating embassy. Noon, silently, they leave Russia. We don't know what happened to them dahil ayaw nilang ma-expose. At ayaw, kumbaga, hindi sa expose sa kung ano man, but nahihiya silang sabihin sa tao na isa sila doon sa mga nagkaroon ng mga cancer, ganyan. And so, nitong kasi pandemic, naging close ang communication at ang connection ng ating embassy sa ating mga sitcoms at sa ating mga kababayan. And so, hindi na po sila nagkaroon ng barrier na lumapit sa ating embassy to seek for help, financial assistance or deportation or whatever things na kailangan nila medical assistance. So, ngayon, marami po sa ating mga kababayan na siguro nasa po ang suffering from cancer. And so, sila na po ang nakahilira na pauwi. So, may iba na mga tinulungan ng ating mga symptoms, ng ating mga kababayan sa kanilang mga pamasahe because they cannot afford, because urgent na, kailangan ng ngayon, as soon as possible, makalabas na sila ng Russia dahil ito, mahina na sila. Pero meron namang iba na nakapag-husay ng ating assistance from the FA, which is yung repatriation. So, alam nyo naman po, pag sa gobyerno, hihintay natin yung kanilang pondo. So, yung iba nakakapaghintay pa, yung iba naman na wala ng time to wait. So, kaming mga OFW ng Russia nag-aambag ng kanilang pamasahe. So, ngayon ang status ng ating mga kababayan dito. Siguro ngayon, mas open lang sila. Kaya po, nakita natin yung percentage ng dami ng mga kababayan natin na merong mga serious illness.
Yan bang mga pinapakitang pictures ngayon? Yan ba yung sinasabi mo mga cancer patients na napauwi na ngayon sa Pilipinas? Ayan. At nakatanggap sila ng ayuda mula sa gobyerno? Yes
po.
Go ahead.
Kompleto po yan. Kompleto po. Ito po si Mary Jane Patintin, isa po sa ating OFW na nagkaroon ng stage 4 cancer. So, nung po ng pandemic, napakahirap po sa atin ang magkaroon ng access sa Pilipinas, sa pondo, sa lahat na po. And so, hirap din po ang aming embassy. So, nagkaroon ng chance na ito ay mapasok natin sa charitable institution ng Russia. And for 2 months, with the joint efforts of our embassy and ating mga, yung kanyang employer, the CFA, and our kababayan, nabigyan po siya ng chance to go home. And until now, she is recovering in Philippines. And then it seems impossible to bring her home because ang required is medical people na mag-akanya sa aeroplano. And the transportation expenses maybe 6 million. Yun ang estimate nila. And everybody is hopeless, but we are all in prayers. Kaya meron pong charitable institution na nagbigay sa kanya ng free airlines ticket pa uwi. And she was accompanied by 2 Russian doctors and 1 representative from embassy. So she was sent home alive. And yung iba din po natin mga kababayan before, hindi po nila yun na-experience because yun nga, nahihiya sila pag-take. Actually, she is almost, nakita naman yung kanyang sitsura nun, napakapayat, and then may catheter na. Ganyan yung sitwasyon niya nung lumapit sa atin. So, we posted on Facebook, we reached out to all possible people na pwedeng makatulong, but then wala tayong pwedeng mapilit dahil nasa pandemic. So, nung na-post namin yan sa Facebook, gumalaw ang DFA, gumalaw ang embassy. So, nailagay siya doon sa hospital, they call it hospital, at a place wherein all cancer patients are there with complete facility, with doctor, with nurses, and everything. I was there, pinuntahan ko po siya, and nabigit natin. And so, she was cared of. In 2 to 3 months, she gained her body. Kumbaga yung payat na yun, parang naging normal na katawan. So, by the grace of God, nakauwi po siya. At ngayon, with her family and with continuous medication po. And sinuportahan po yun ng ating government na check-up niya. OWA member din po siya. Kaya continuous po ngayon yung kanyang treatment.
Siya ba yung nasa wheelchair kanina na may kasamang dalawang Russians, doctors sila? Yan yon, sila yon.
Yes po.
Ang galing naman. Oo, parang hindi ko siya nakilala kasi ang laki na nung binuti nung itsura niya, pati tumaba siya kesa nung nakahiga siya noon, ano. Thank you naman sa mga katulad ninyo na tumutulong sa ating mga kababayan dyan. Ngayon naman, EJ, can you tell me, kasi recently, having witnessed the violence during the chaotic protest there in Kazakhstan, di ba nagkaroon ng protesta dahil sa pag-rise ng fuel prices. Kumusta ang ating mga Pilipino dyan? Wala bang nadamay sa protesta? At ano ba ang kanilang, may mga naikwento ba sa yung experience kung ano ang na-witness nila during the protest na maaaring hindi pa natin nakita dito sa news?
Yes, ma'am. Na-share ko po sa inyo yung isang picture wherein tatlo sa ating mga kababayan are taking their oath with our Vice President. And sila po ngayon yung on the ground. Nandun po sila sa Almaty, North Sultan, and different places ng Kazakhstan. And so, ang first po namin na-reach out yung aming leader doon na si Miss Ninjata Padilla. And then, medyo malayo siya sa sentro. So, yung kanilang internet connection was not affected. But yung aming next leader and another one, so yan sila, yung dalawa, wala talaga silang connection until yesterday. And so, hindi ko sila nakausap. Yung kahapon, yung isa na nandun sa sentro, yung sinabi mo sa atin ay yung nakakatakot talaga. Kasi sinabi niya nung Monday, parang na silang balita. So, hindi nila ina-expect na ganun ka-worse. So, ang nangyari, tinawagan siya ng amo niya noong Tuesday, na sabi ko, hindi ko home na kasi parang may problema, may protest na. So, noong una, nasa streets pa lang daw ng Kazakhstan, parang hindi pa sila medyo natakot. Pero nung medyo hapon-hapon na, nanunod na sila ng mga sasakyan, at nag-panic buying na rin ang ating mga kababayan dahil na-expect nila na posibleng mag-lockdown for duty. Kasi ang ginagawa daw po ng mga nag-protest ay binabasag yung mga establishment.
Wow.
Nag-rob sila ng mga banks. And then, ang sad is that if may pera yung mga kabayan natin sa bank, they can purchase in any shop. So, parang nag-protest rin yung mga shops na they don't accept the cards sa bank. So, kung ang cash, hindi ka makakabili kasi pa gusto mong bumili o nasa tabi mo bilisan. At the same time, pagka next day, wala nang mabili dahil na panic na. Isang kababayan, bumili daw siya ng tubig at bigas. Yun lang ang na-afford niya at that time dahil wala siyang cash. And so, ang sad is, ginova rin nila ang isang cell site. Kumbaga yung internet connection nila, nag-black out during that time. Wala kaming monitor sa kanila. Except yung isa, nagtatawagan sila sa local by phone. Kaya meron access ang ating entity doon sa mga information. Pero isa lang yung meron signal. And meron nga yung iba na natrap din doon sa bahay ng kanilang amo, hindi sila nakapag, wala silang nabili ng mga kung ano dahil the usual day, wala silang pagkain, bibili lang dyan sa labas. Pero nung nag-start na po yung activity na yun, wala na po silang nagawa, kaya nag-request sila sa ibang bahay kung pwede kahit tubig lang at saka yung gatas na maibigay sa kanila. But pinag-uusapan ng embassy ngayon at ng ating mga people leaders doon kung paano po natin ma-address yung issue na yun. Kasi hindi nga accessible yung mga banks, hindi nga kung gusto mong mag-withdraw, wala rin banks na open. So, napakahirap po talaga sa kanila. Meron silang system ngayon, yung parang sa atin, parang GCash, na by phone mo isi-send. Yun pwede tinatanggap yun ng mga establishments kung gusto nilang bumili ng mga pagkain. So, ngayon, possibly yun ang ginagamit ng embassy. May pinadala siguro sila isang grupo din doon na magbibigay ng mga parang Gcash na yan doon sa ating mga kababayan para makabili sila. At meron din pong volunteer na kaza na kumbaga siya yung bibili sa shop at nagdadalhin doon sa mga location ng mga Filipinos dahil ayaw nila na lumabas. Because in Kazakhstan right now, hindi lang yung takot ng mga Pilipino, but then meron din yung checking na ng mga document. Kumikit po sila doon sa dokumento. So, yung mga wala pong documents, talagang takot sila na lumabas dahil the station po kaagad ang ipapatay sa kanila. So far, most of them are safe. Wala pong naibalita na isangkot doon sa gulo. At lahat sila ay okay. Yun lang, nung na-restore yung communication, yung internet connection, medyo matagal kaya lahat nag-worry. So, ang hiningi nilang una sa mga kababayan is, lalo sa Moscow is yung load para makatawag sa family dahil nag-worry na yung family nila sa Pilipinas. But now, everything is okay. Yung na-mention ng isa natin kababayan na sabi niya, una, ang demand lang daw po nila is yung ibaba yung presyo ng kanilang oil. So, pumunta yung mga protesters sa Palace sa harap ng bahay ng presidente. And then, binigay naman yung demand nila na sabi niya, okay, tonight, may callback tayo. Pero kinabukasan po, in the evening, merong ibang grupo na parang sumakay. Ang hinihingi nila hindi na oil price, kundi pagtaas ng sweldo. Kumbaga sa labor issues na naman sila at sa corruption. So parang mas lalo nilang ginulo. Kaya nung Wednesday, tumawag na ang President ng Kazakhstan sa Moscow and then nagpadala na rin po kaagad si President Putin ng kanilang mga forces doon sa Moscow mismo. And then pagdating nila doon, hindi na daw kumbaga centralized na sila. Wala nang putukan. Anytime daw may pumuputok na bombs everywhere, kahit nasa street, bigla na lang may puputok o kaya lahat ng mga nagdadaan, inaano nila, hinaharas nila. Sabi yung kaibigan ko, 2 o 3 ang pinatay na sniper. Meron ding mga yung axe, yun ang nila, sa mga nakalubong na nila. So, napakadelikado talaga. So, nung dumating ng mga Russian forces, medyo okay na, wala na daw mga, wala na pumuputok na bomba, at saka na sila, pero mga 15 to 16 na police forces, as to the news ng Moscow Times ngayon, ang talagang namatay, at saka yung iba is more or less 150 to 160 ang injured. So, different places yun. Pero pinaka-sentro talaga is ang Almaty at yung Sultan. Yung Almaty talaga ang ginano nila. Pero now, ang makikita mo na lang sa street is yung mga debris, yung mga yung mga sinunog na mga sasakyan kasi hindi pa na naayos, hindi pa natanggal doon. Pero they considered it peaceful na kasi wala nang putukan, walang naririnig na bomba.
Wala namang wala tayong embassy sa Almaty, sa Russia pa din ang main embassy ang main Philippine embassy natin.
Opo, wala po tayong embassy doon. Noon parang meron silang meron silang diplomat representation. Pero parang nag-retire na daw yata. So, dito na sila lahat nakasentro sa Moscow.
At meron pa rin bang nationwide state of emergency dyan sa Almaty? Dyan sa Kazakhstan? And meron bang announcement ng embassy na alert level or evacuation for our Filipinos there? Filipino friends?
Wala naman po.
Wala naman
po. Bumalik na po sa normal ang trabaho ng ating mga kababayan. They are back to work now. Pero yun nga, taksi-taksi siguro. Kaya yung the way na normal, sinusundo na lang sila ng kanilang mga amo, hindi na sila pinapalabas na naglalakad. Like before na they can use public transport. So ngayon, sinusundo na lang po. For the meantime, siguro ganyan.
Alright, thank you very much, EJ, para sa update mo niyan sa ating mga kababayan dyan sa nangyayari sa Russia at lalo na po sa Kazakhstan kung saan nagkaroon ng gulo recently. Maraming salamat sa lahat ng iyong information. Do you have any last message for our viewers here? At sa mga nanonood sa iyo ngayon? Sige, go ahead.
Sa lahat namin mga kababayan dyan sa Pilipinas, huwag po kayo mag-alala. Hindi po kami pinapabayaan ng aming embassy. And actually, they have formed the Filipino Community Council to strengthen more the connection of our kababayan to our embassy. So this is a great help for everybody and we are thankful for that. And huwag po silang mag-alala dahil we are responsible of ourselves and we are always in communication also with God na i-bless tayo at pakaiingatan araw-araw. So yun lang po, sana po sa Pilipinas, ganun din, everybody is healthy and God bless everyone.
Maraming salamat, EJ. All right. EJ Merced from Moscow, Russia. And ASEAN in Focus will be back right after this short break.
Welcome back. Now let's go back to the Philippines, where the country urged Indonesia to lift its recent ban on coal exports, with Manila warning Monday the policy will have a detrimental impact on the coal-reliant country. Indonesia, the world's biggest exporter of coal used to generate electricity this month, stopped fossil fuel shipments to secure its domestic power supply. The Philippines imports about 70% of its coal supply, and nearly 97% of that comes from Indonesia, officials' data show. Most of the coal is used for power generation. Jakarta's ban on January coal exports would be detrimental to countries like the Philippines that rely on coal-fired power, Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi said in a letter to his Indonesian counterpart last Thursday, according to a Department of Energy statement on Monday. Power generated from coal comprises about 60% of the country's power demand, Cusi added. Philippines Foreign Secretary Teodoro Locsin has been enlisted to appeal against Indonesia's decision via Association of Southeast Asian Nations, the statement said. Japan has also issued a similar appeal to Indonesia. Indonesia's export ban was imposed after coal miners failed to meet their obligation to set aside 25% of the output for the domestic market.
Indonesia, the world's top exporter of thermal coal, on Monday said it would ease the ban on exports of the fuel that it imposed to head off looming blackouts. 14 ships loaded with coal and destined for overseas markets would be allowed to leave Indonesia, Coordinating Minister Luhut said in a statement. But all other barges with coal for export must divert their cargo to power stations in need of supply, according to the statement, adding that the government will reevaluate exports on Wednesday. The January 1 ban on shipments of coal used in power generation threw the market into disarray. Prices of the fuel lurched higher as ships laden with hundreds of thousands of tons of the mineral destined for major markets in Japan, China, and India sat in ports, and all new production was diverted to domestic power stations. Indonesia's export ban was imposed after coal miners failed to meet their obligation to set aside 25% of output for the domestic market. Analysts and coal producers blamed mismanagement at Peru Hasan Listrik Negara, or PLN, the country's state-owned utility, which allowed reserves to fall to as low as 3 days' supply at some power plants. Of the 5.1 million tons called for by the government this month, only 35,000, or less than 1%, had been supplied, according to the ministry on January 1. Even if current acute shortages are eased, analysts have said Indonesia faces long-term structural supply constraints because exporters have little financial incentive to supply the domestic market, and they are forced to sell to the state at a price far below current market rates, according to analysts.
The Philippine Army's or PA Armor Division got a much-needed firepower boost with the delivery of 15 M125A2 armored mortar carriers or AMCS, which are equipped with 120mm mounted mortar systems or MMS. PA spokesperson Colonel Cerces Trinidad said the AMCS were delivered on December 29 and were sourced from the Israeli firm Elbit Systems. The AMCS are under Horizon 2 of the Revised Armed Forces of the Philippines Modernization Program and acquired under the Army's Mounted Mortar Acquisition Project. The Cardom 120mm recoil mortar system mounted the M125A2 AMC is an autonomous computerized system that has a range of 7,000 meters and a maximum fire rate of 16 rounds per minute, operated by 4 crewmen. The AMCS with MMS are used by U.S. Army, Israeli Defense Force, and North Atlantic Treaty Organization or NATO countries. Meanwhile, PA Chief Lieutenant General Romeo Bronier Jr. welcomed the arrival of AMCS as he waits for its formal acceptance, noting that these deliveries are in line with the Army's thrust on enhancing the capabilities of its ground forces.
Thank you very much, Esther, for keeping me company here on ASEAN in Focus.
Thank you also, Alma. It's always my pleasure. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Esther Odanga from Thailand Bureau, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you very much. Stay tuned for more. We'll see you back tomorrow, same time, same place, here on ASEAN in Focus. Stay in the news because we live in interesting times. Bye.